Hello and welcome back to the Parents Roundtable. Experts and everyday parents discuss the issues. Today I have Mike Domitrz here with us, and his organization is the Date Safe organization. He is known for the impact his programs, trainings, and publications have made across the world for parents, teenagers, families, educational institutions, the U.S. military, and the media. You may have seen him as the featured expert on Dateline's NBC's My Kid Would Never Do That. Today, Mike is one of the leading experts for transforming our sexual culture to one being built on consent and respect, discussing sexual decision-making, asking first, healthy relationships, bystander intervention, and supporting survivors of sexual assault. As the brother of a rape survivor, Mike's mission is personal. His ability to share powerful emotions, both serious and hilariously funny, while giving readers and audiences realistic how-to skills, and I hope we're going to get some of those how-to skills today, to implement in their lives, separates Mike's message from other experts and authors. He's an author with a unique combination of provocateur and advocate who captivates readers throughout his books. Mike Domitrz, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me on. Quite the introduction there, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we expect lots of laughs now.
Yeah, well, that's when I'm on. That's funny because people will say, "Are you funny naturally?" And I say, "No, that's something that I've had to work at on the material that I share." Absolutely. So, but I'm sure we will have some laughs along the way.
Good. Excellent. So maybe we could just start a little bit with, maybe we could start with sort of the big picture of where social culture is today, sexual social culture is today. And then maybe think about how parents might be dealing with that and approaching it.
Yeah, well, let's dive right in. So at the Date Safe Project, we do work with parents with children of all ages, from elementary to high school to university to grown adults in their 40s, 50s, and 60s in their own sexual decision-making in their relationships. So let's talk about today. First of all, every parent should take a breath, because a lot of the things that you see blown up in the media and in discussions are individual or situations that are occurring very infrequently, but when they occur, they make a lot of news because they're out of the ordinary. And then it makes it sound like this is happening all over the country. So let me give you an example. It's a little bit graphic for some, but it's an example that parents need to be aware of. A few years ago, the media was starting to cover this fad that was happening called rainbow parties. Rainbow parties. Okay. And what a rainbow party was that young women, teenagers, would put different color lipsticks. Each of them would have a different color lipstick on their lips, and then they give oral sex to the same person, thus leaving a rainbow. This was the concept. Did this occur? It did occur. Was this a common behavior that was taking place across the country? No, not at all. In fact, when you mentioned it in most high school environments, they were like, "Oh my gosh, that is disgusting. Who would do that?" But it didn't mean it wasn't happening, but it was incredibly rare. But when it got picked up by the news, it sounded like, you need to be aware your children may be participating in this, as if this was happening around the corner at every high school. So we have to be very careful of situations that occur and get blown up more than they are actually occurring. And we need to be actually more aware of the ones that are actually happening that we're not talking about. And that's where we should be having our focus.
Okay.
So look, sexual activity is happening in middle schools and high schools. That's happening, yes. If your kid's not involved with it, they're hearing about it. So therefore, they're involved in it culturally because it's part of their lives. So what's interesting is parents will talk about, well, I've told my kids don't do it. I've talked about abstinence, or I've talked about condoms. I say, okay, have you talked to them about how to talk? And they're like, what do you mean? Well, why are you telling them all these things, condoms, abstinence? They're like, because I don't want them to make a mistake. I want them to make the right choices. Are you actually giving them a skill set to make better choices? Or are you just giving them rules? There's a huge difference in rules and skill sets. So are you giving them a skill set that when they get to the appropriate age, they can talk about what they're comfortable with and not comfortable with? They can ask their partner about what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with. Or when they're not at an age they should be engaging in behavior, do they have the word skill set to be able to have that conversation with somebody and say, I'm not ready for this. We are not doing this. You need to ask me. Stop what you're doing. You are not asking. You're just trying. That's not okay. This is my body. Do they have those skill sets? Because what most people say, parents say is, don't let anybody ever touch you if you don't want to touch you. Okay, that's not a skill set. What's the skill that allows me to do that? Because I might freeze in that moment. I might freak out and freeze and be scared and freeze. What's the skill set? And that's what we need to be having for those conversations.
So just give me a reality check on what age I might already need to have my child prepared to say, stop what you're doing. I'm not ready for this.
Well, stop what you're doing as soon as they can start talking. Stop what you're doing, because that's a boundary marker. Now, I'm not ready for this is later, right? Because that's a higher intellect level, higher maturity level to say when I'm ready and when I'm not ready. That means that I should be at an age where I'm allowed to have that. I'm legally able to make that choice and I'm not ready. All right. So, but stop what you're doing. That's not okay. Should be something we're teaching our children very, very, very early on. And the reason why is this. What if it's a relative? What if it's a babysitter? What if it's a neighbor? And I've never taught my children the skill set of do not touch me there. That is not okay. Oh, you're telling me that no one's going to believe me? Well, my parents have told me they will believe me. That's a skill set to know what to say. So stop what you're doing right now, giving them the actual skill sets. Now, you might not say, teach, my parents have taught me to say that because you don't want to put the child in potentially in physical harm danger. So different experts on self-defense would teach this differently. That's not my area of expertise. But the skill sets, having those conversations, really important.
Yeah. And is that role playing? Is it?
It's yes, and yes. It's role playing. It's talking about what words they would want to use, so that you're not just giving them words, but maybe they have different set of words they may feel more comfortable with, and you need to take that into account. So, how would you feel comfortable having this conversation? And if they go, well, I think I'd want to say this. Well, that's great. Okay, awesome. That's even more empowering. But they might say, I don't know what I would do. I don't know. Okay, what about this? And you give them an option, right? And so you're having very detailed, practical conversations. Now, here's what's amazing about this. Let's say that you teach a child when they're very young that this is your body. No one has the right to touch you in that area without your permission. And you're teaching them that. And then they get to the dating ages and you've taught them nobody has a right. And now that you are getting to an age where it's legal, they should always ask you if they do want to touch you there, right? Now it all lines up, right? We have alignment here. It's not all of a sudden, you never talked to me about any of this and suddenly you're talking to me about all of it. We want to have a gradual, progressive conversation as much as possible. Now, I know there's a few parents sitting out there going, too late. I didn't have the progressive when they were younger. So is it too late? No. It's never too late. I've met people in their 50s that are in my audience going, I never learned this skill set for myself. Today was a game changer for my life, my sexual intimacy with my partner, because I learned I have the right to say yes or no. I have the right to have a choice in sexual decision making. And they're in their 50s and married 30 years.
Yeah.
It's never too late. We're just trying to give you, if you can start earlier, start earlier. There are things that I didn't do as well when my kids were younger that I wish I did. That doesn't mean I can't teach them now.
Right.
So you're never too late.
Okay, but fill in the gaps for me, because I get the 3-4-year-old conversation. Kids are just learning about their bodies. You're really helping them to establish boundaries. And I get the I'm dating age conversation. What does it look like for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds?
Yeah. Are you hearing about kids liking each other on the playground? Have you ever heard of what are the comments you hear? That way you're not feeding. What are the comments you hear? Well, so-and-so likes so-and-so. What do they mean by like? Well, they kissed each other. Oh, okay. Well, did they ask first? I don't think so. Wow. So do you think that you'd want somebody to give you a choice before they would do that with you? And most people are going to say, well, yeah, I'd want a choice. Well, then they should have asked. Now let's talk about why they're at an age where that's not okay, and have that conversation about why waiting is important and why there are age laws to protect the vulnerable. And these aren't to take away your rights, but they're actually to protect your rights.
Hmm.
And so having those conversations so they can recognize, it doesn't mean they're not going to be environments where messed up things happen. It means that they can recognize it's messed up. And that skill set alone is incredibly important as a parent to give your child. Can you recognize what's messed up? Example. Different research will show different numbers here, but they'll say now the average child's seen pornography by the age of 11. So that number's gotten lower over the years. And so parents will go, I don't ever want my child pornography. You don't get control over that, actually, because they live in a world that has phones and tablets and computers that their friends are looking at it and showing it to them. So the better question is, when they see it, can they recognize the harmful effects, the danger of it potentially? Can they see why it's not realistic and how that fantasized version could actually be dangerous? So can they recognize what's wrong versus just never let them see it?
So if you know that they're going to see it, but you don't know when, is pornography something that you talk about before you expect that they've seen it?
Yes. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be about pornography. It can be about the human body, right? So for instance, you take them to an art museum and you say, there's a piece of art and there's a nude person. Isn't the human body beautiful when it's respected and treated as a piece of art and beauty?
I have to say that was when I was 10 and 9. No, 9. Yeah, I was 9. When I was 9 and sleeping over at a friend's, and we found our father's Playboys. Playboys, is that what they're called? Yeah.
Yeah, Playboy, yes.
Playboys. Yes, when I got home, she put me in the car and she drove me to the Fine Arts Museum, and she showed me every naked woman in the, naked body, every naked body in the museum. I'm like, can we go? No, I want you to see there are all kinds of bodies.
But that's brilliant. That is brilliant parenting. Most people don't do that. Most people see it and go, do you know what's wrong about that? Versus let's talk about how amazing the body is and how beautiful it is. And here's the shame of pornography, is that it takes away that beauty and everything it is and makes it objectified. That's the shame. It's not being treated like it. Now, I'm not saying all pornography. People will argue there's exceptions to the rule. But as a whole, what happens is objectification instead of honoring the beauty and the temple of the human body. And that's not judging somebody's choices as a parent. Like, some parents are going to believe that premarital sex can be healthy in the right situations. Others are going to believe that's atrocious and it should not happen until marriage. So regardless of your beliefs in that area, your children should believe that their human body is a gift and a temple to be treasured, honored, and respected. And so that doesn't even have to do with how many sexual partners you believe somebody should have in life. Every time you choose to be sexually active, the body should be a gift. Every time. So if you're married to somebody 40 years, that body in front of you should be a gift every single time. It's why when we'll hear news stories or viral videos about a parent who says something like, and this actually happened a few years ago, a parent said, every time my son sees you, she wrote this to the female friends of her sons, every time my son sees you in a bikini or an item that shows more of your body, he sees you as a sexual object and no longer can respect you the same way. And a bunch of us were like, time out. Why don't you teach your son that no matter how he sees that body, it's a gift every single time. It's a temple to be treasured, honored, and respected. Not that he has, now that he's seen it in a sexual manner, which he's chose to sexualize, by the way, that it can now just be a sexual object. That's so obscene and gross, the concept. It means that if I'm married to someone, once I've seen them nude, they are purely a sexual object. And they can't be all these other things too. And so it doesn't make sense. But parents need to have these conversations because kids are hearing that version. Well, once I've seen you nude, you might as well let me do everything with you. That guilt is used against young teenagers. Oh, you sent me that nude of you. Well, now I own you. Now you better send me this. Now you better send me that, because you've already done the worst thing. And it's used against them versus going, you know what? I did show you that one nude. You should have everything you ever need, because you got that one. And maybe I shouldn't have sent it by the way you're acting. I probably shouldn't have. Oh, you're threatening that you're going to show it to everyone. Well, that makes me think sooner or later you're going to anyways, which would be child pornography, by the way. Now you're distributing child pornography of me. That's not cool. And I'm not going to stand back and do nothing. So it's having these conversations.
So I had a daughter, and I feel like I did a pretty good job talking to her. I'm the mother to stepsons. I did not talk to my stepsons. I'm fairly certain my husband didn't either. So tell me just a little bit more about talking to boys.
Yeah, here's the good news. The conversation does not change. So one of the biggest mistakes a lot of parents make is, here's my daughter, I'm going to have this conversation. Here's my son, I'm going to have this conversation. I'll say, okay, what is the difference in those conversations? Almost always the daughter is protective based. Almost always in some way about you don't want to be in this situation, or if this happens, it's protective based. If they have one at all with the son, which I appreciate you sharing, because a lot of times there isn't one with the son. If they have one with the son, it's how not to get in trouble. Like, don't get someone pregnant. Don't do something stupid. Right? It's a very degrading conversation, by the way. It's not like an uplifting positive about sexual. When in fact, what you want is to raise good human beings. And so instead of worrying about, am I raising this certain gender role, am I raising a wonderful human being? So let's think about what you might say. To your daughter, many people focus on, you don't want to get pregnant until you're ready to make that choice. Okay, so have you had the same question with your son? You don't want to engage in sexual behavior that could put at risk a pregnancy. We need to talk about that. Okay, to my daughter, your body is precious, and it's amazing, and it's so spectacular. Nobody should be touching unless they treat you that way. To my son, have I ever told them their body's amazing, spectacular, and a gift to be treasured, honored, and respected that way? And no partner should pressure you into sex? Most parents are like, well, no, I didn't. Well, have you ever thought that their partner might be the one more assertive than they are? So you need to be able to have all these conversations. Now, there's intricacies that could be different by gender, but interestingly, all genders should know those. Right now, it's particularly if you're in a heterosexual relationship. So if you're saying that my child's heterosexual and identifies as a boy, as a son, well, I'm only going to teach him some things. Well, wait a second. What if you taught him everything you taught the daughter about her body so he could better understand his partners?
Yeah,
that'd be logical. What about the daughter learning the same thing so that they could better understand their partner? By the way, even if you're a same gender relationship, wouldn't it be good to know everything so you can understand society in these conversations and what other people are experiencing? So it's a positive all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. So
let me give you a great example of that.
Yes.
A great example of that is this was years ago when I was traveling, and I still do travel around to a lot of universities. And a university was picking me up from the airport, and it was a sex health educator on campus that picked me up. And she said, Mike, I want to tell you what I say the first day of my classes. And I go, okay. She goes, I walk in the room and I say, guys, have you seen your penis lately? And everybody starts laughing. She goes, oh, that's obvious? And they're like, yes. Okay. Women, have you seen your clitoris lately? And the room goes dead quiet. And she goes, do we have a problem? And that's the opening day.
Nice.
All right. Which is, and you start to think about that. Okay, what is that else to apply to? People go, why do some people at young ages especially engage in oral sex before engaging in almost kissing? That literally happens. How's that happening? So when you break it down in a heterosexual example, in this case, because obviously a lot of relationships are not heterosexual, we have same gender. So I tend to use the word partner in all my work. So let's say that we have two partners together. And in this case, they happen to be heterosexual. And the boy at what age started having an orgasm? What would you guess is the age the boys probably had an orgasm by?
I don't know. You mean an orgasm being a wet dream for a young boy? Or
any form of an orgasm. We'll say not beyond a wet dream. We'll say beyond a wet dream. So we'll say himself. He had it by himself.
Okay. And we're not just talking a baby who's rubbed up against something.
Correct. It's intentional. That's right.
I don't know, 9 or 10?
Okay. And some would say as late as 12 to 14. It just depends. Okay. So interesting. What age has a young woman intentionally had an orgasm?
Oh, I think there are girls who simply, they don't know their clitoris is there.
Yes, correct. So the number is completely in a different ballpark, as in sometimes in their 30s.
Yeah.
If ever. Now, some of that's biological. We have to be fair here. There's differences that can occur. All right, so some of that's biological. But now they're dating. They're 16. He's been experiencing what an orgasm feels like for 4 years. He says, do you want to play? Because he's used to playing. right? I mean, this is right. There's a little bit of common sense to this. She's been taught that her role is to keep people happy, which our society teaches a specific gender, that it's your job to keep everyone happy. So she does that to keep the person happy. And she even says to other people, I love doing that for him. It's not about what she's experiencing. I love doing that for him. He says, well, let me return the favor. She says, no way. No way, that's gross. That's disgusting. And we have a problem, folks. And this is very common. Now, where did she learn it was gross and disgusting? Well, she was told her whole life that area of her body no one was supposed to touch. And then when she got to the age of 12 to 14, when he was experiencing orgasms, she watched a video at school that talked about menstruation and made her feel gross and disgusting about her body. And so you have a clash here of understandings of their sexuality, neither of which are necessarily healthy. I mean, some will say, well, at least he's explored his in this case, but it doesn't mean he's explored it in a healthy way. We don't know that, but it's a clash. Now imagine that woman's with another woman and neither of them have ever been taught proper sexuality of their bodies, or that the males both experience it by themselves, but don't know how to treat another person in that experience. So it doesn't matter where we're coming from here. The conversations become so important to have.
Okay. So just to go back to your previous point of having the same conversation with the boys as the girls, you would tell a girl about her clitoris and you would tell a boy about a girl's clitoris and how she might experience and how she might pleasure herself.
Yes.
And how he might pleasure her.
Yes. And even, by the way, you can say to your children, if you're in a same gender relationship, it's still good to know culture, what's happening to your friends, the ones you care about, because they might come to you and be stuck in these conversations and you want to be able to help them. It's good to understand human sexuality. It plays such a huge role in people's lives. So this is a good thing to know. And I know some people are thinking right now, wait. If I have this conversation, they're going to start having sexual wants, urges, and feelings. That's too dangerous. Really? How'd that work for all of us in high school, middle school? Did you not have the urges until it was first spoken to you by an adult? I mean, come on. That's just beyond ridiculous. They're having the urges and feelings because these are normal, natural feelings to have. And there are people who are asexuals who are not having those feelings, and that's normal and natural for them. For a lot of people, it's normal and natural. We got to be able to have a conversation about it.
But let's pause there just a minute, because so two things. One, early in my teaching career, I taught a class called Quest Skills for Adolescent Living. It included a question box. You know, I, in my infinite wisdom of 22 years old, thought that I had to read each and every question and answer each and every question in class out loud. And now I look back at it, and I've taught thousands of seventh graders now. And I know that some of them are still going home and playing with their dolls, actually.
That's right. That's right.
And some of them, you know, have had full-on crushes. Their bodies are absolutely sexually alive. And
in seventh grade, some of them have had oral sex, if not sexual intercourse.
Yes.
Right.
And are thirsty for information.
Yep.
And that exactly is the dilemma. I'm looking at the kid who's still basically playing with her dolls. And I'm going, do I tell you this stuff? Because you're
all right, yeah, let's go there. Here's the thing. She's sitting there going, in this case, you gave a female example. So she's going, ooh, gross. I don't want to hear this. That isn't changing by you talking about it. And because that's not where she's at. She's not interested. So she's still going, I don't need this, right? It's interesting. I don't need this. If she leaves the room going, I'm a little curious about this now that we talked about it. Better than she never getting that conversation. Because otherwise you're sitting there waiting till she gets there. Well, how are you going to know she gets there? The first time someone tries something and she liked it? And then a year later, she tells someone? I mean, there's no skill set there then.
Right.
So what you want to be able to say to somebody is you might not be at this place yet. You might not be for this many years. And we're having the conversation because you have people around you that are experimenting. We need to be able to talk about this. Oh, by the way, we're talking about this because it's illegal at your age, and I don't want any of you getting into sexual crimes. So we need to be very honest about this and say why this is dangerous, and we need to talk about the biology of it so you can understand everything about it. You need to know that if somebody's trying to coerce you, you need to understand your body so you can understand they're lying or they're misleading you. You need knowledge. And what's scary is we have parents who say, I don't want my children to have knowledge. Now, don't get me wrong. Poorly taught knowledge can be dangerous on any topic, right? Poorly taught knowledge about alcohol and drugs can be very dangerous, right? Poorly taught knowledge on sexual health can be dangerous, without a doubt. So it needs to be done well and appropriately. And so if you're sitting there going, well, how do I do that well and appropriately? Learn, get resources. Listen to your podcast and other podcasts that teach you how to have these conversations. How-to skill sets. As parents, we need to admit, we need to look in the mirror every day and go, I need some more how-tos today. I need some more how-tos today. Because every day we can use more of them. Some people go, well, Mike, it must be easy for you. You're the expert on, and I'm not the expert. People will talk this way. You're the expert on consent. Your kids just must have this all down. No, my kids know their dad is the guy who talks about dating and intimacy around the world. That's not exactly what most kids want to have come home and have a conversation talk with, right? You want to believe your parent's an idiot on the conversation. That's more what most kids want to believe. So that has its own conflict potentially. So there's no smooth sailing no matter what you do as a parent. And there's some parents going, oh, I have smooth sailing. I have a perfect relationship with my child. Okay, you are the exception. Most of us are going to have roller coasters. And I've met the parents who said, oh, I've got smooth sailing. And 5 years later, they discovered things they never knew about their kid. Their kid was brilliantly honest with them about the things they wanted to be honest with them and kept these little things over here. So the mom or dad always felt they had this incredible relationship because how much they did tell them, how graphic and detailed they were, but they kept this other stuff away. They were very smart in how they did it.
I'm looking at the time, and I do want to hear about your Can I Kiss You campaign, because it's been making a difference, and that's really exciting.
It's so fulfilling because we do get to hear from people who either saw the live workshop, the live program in their schools and their colleges and their military installations. And I get to meet them 10 years later sometimes. Like somebody just walks up to me and says, I saw this 10 years ago and it changed my marriage. It changed my life. I met someone afterwards and started asking for the first time. And we always ask now. We've been together all these years. The difference we've been able to see is profound, and it's been so exciting. And it's been researched to be proven also, which is really neat. So if somebody's going, well, what is it? Well, there's a couple mediums in which it exists. If you're a parent listening right now, we have a book called Can I Kiss You, which you can look right up on Amazon by Mike Domitrz. And we have a program called Can I Kiss You? They can be brought to schools, universities. And I said military earlier, and some people are thinking, oh, that must be interesting in the military. I work with military installations all over the world. And it can be an audience of 18 to 24-year-olds. It can be an audience of 40 to 60-year-olds who need these skill sets just as badly. And so the Can I Kiss You book and the program gives everybody of all ages these skill sets. I'll give you a classic example. I ask couples, how often have you looked your partner in the eye and said, what would you love for us to experience in bed tonight? And they'll look at me like, excuse me? I go, well, how long have you been married? 20 years. You've never had that conversation? Well, no. But you want your kids to know how to talk about what they want and don't want. Have you tried it for your own relationship? Role modeling is how we gain the greatest skills, by practicing ourselves, by learning ourselves how that can be uncomfortable or comfortable or exciting and passionate. We also gain confidence, and when we share it with our kids, it here's a skill set. And I don't mean share personal. Don't share, this is what we do, because that's like, I do this, so you must do this. No. Talk about it from a place of confidence without revealing your own personal behaviors, because it's about your kid, not you at that point. One of the biggest mistakes parents make is they think, but if I share my personal stories, they'll see I'm being real. No, actually, they'll see validation for them to make the same mistakes. What I mean by that is ask any teenager, why do you ask your parents if they had sex before they were married? Because I wanted to hear yes. Why did you want to hear yes? Because I wanted to be able to do the same thing. But wait, your parents told you it was a mistake. They did. They answered yes. They told you it was a mistake. They didn't want you to make the same mistake. And most teenagers go, it couldn't have been that bad. I'm here and everything worked out. They got the validation they were seeking. It was not about being real. It was about, give me validation. I can make the same mistakes. There's no need for that. You should be able to have an honest conversation with your kids about what's happening in society without saying what you're doing in your bedroom or what you've done in your bedroom. And by the way, you don't need to ask your kids, what have you done with so-and-so? Because instead, talk about what do you think is okay or not okay, or how do you think somebody should be able to talk about a partner? When you say, did you two last night? Well, suddenly you're becoming invasive and telling them they have boundaries, but you have the right to breathe. You want to give them skills versus judgment.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that I mean, my emphasis has always been that sex education is relationship education.
Yes.
And relationship education is what is the conversation that we can have when the lights are on and we're fully clothed.
Yes.
How good are we at saying that, no, we'd really rather go to Luigi's tonight, and actually we don't want to go to Hamachi's.
Yeah. And when the clothes come off, can we continue those conversations?
Yes. So
it goes both directions. Like, we might be great with clothes on, but with clothes off, suddenly we stop talking. That's a problem. Can we have those conversations? It's a relationships course. It's a respect course. It's an honoring of one's boundaries and partner's boundaries. It's all these things that lead up to the sexual intimacy that will dictate the sexual intimacy.
Yes. Yeah. Right. But just trying to help kids see that, look, if you give in and you say every single time, well, okay, fine, we'll go to that. Okay, fine, we'll do that. In terms of like whatever, you're ice skating or bowling or something, then how do you expect to get into bed and to say, yeah, no, actually, tonight I want something different?
Yeah, and when the language I use is, to everybody in a relationship, do you have equal choice? And is it exercised? Because a lot of teenagers will say, I have equality in my relationship. Okay, is it exercised? What do you mean? Well, show me where. Who are you always going where they want to go? Then it's not exercised. Are you always hanging out at their house, but you want to hang out at your house sometimes? And then it's not exercised. So not only do you have equal choice, is it exercised? And where and how does that show itself?
Yeah, exactly. So I hate that we're at the end of our time, because this is super interesting. And I feel like it's one of the conversations that parents really, really want to have and aren't necessarily having.
Well, and that's why years ago we created the DVD, because parents were saying, Mike, I can't take you home. So, and have these conversations. I don't just mean me, it could be any expert, but I can't just take the expert home and have them have the conversation. How do I? So we created the DVD, Help My Teen Is Dating, to help parents have these conversations. And some might be going, what if they're not a teen? The DVD, I always said it's mistitled. It should be Help I Have a Kid.
Yeah.
In a sexualized world. That should really be what it is. And how do we have these conversations?
Exactly. Okay, this is a bit of a non sequitur, but I just want to slip it in just because it's my own personal question. I was babysitting 9 and 7-year-old, and they were doing a lot of, well, not a lot, but, this sort of like, oh, that's your bottom. Like, somebody reaches down to get something. It's like, oh, I saw your bottom. That you showed me your bottom. And I mean, my approach to that has mostly been to ignore it. And I'm just curious what your response would be like when you have kids who are and I mean, I see it more like with 3 and 4-year-olds. That's like, oh, you've got a penis, Mike. You're a boy. You see that kind of stuff I'm pretty used to. But
right.
When I sort of see it in slightly elementary school kids, and they're still kind of obsessed with it, I just was like, oh, I don't remember that as much.
It could be that they are late to the conversation. It's not that they're holding on to it. It's that they've never had it until now. It's why the earlier you can have age appropriate, it helps them actually mature to appropriate age levels, right? It keeps them consistent with that. And I have to be very straightforward here. This part about what's appropriate at what age on sexual discussion of language would probably not be what would be called directly in my wheelhouse, right? Because I'm consent and boundaries, which is what we've mainly been talking, how to describe your boundaries and that this is my body. And that's different than saying what age is appropriate to say I have a vagina, you have a penis, and we're laughing about it versus we're serious about it. So that's probably going to be a little bit more in a sex health educator.
Okay. All right. I was just curious if you had.
Sure. Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. But we do hear about those stories. And sometimes it is just a kid who's lagging. They're lagging in emotional maturity or in understanding.
Yeah. Right. That's an interesting idea. So, again, it's like as a boundary, there's still like this difference, because we wouldn't say, don't point out her elbow. That's not nice. Or
yeah, I talk to parents. Okay, this part I do talk to parents about, which is, do you teach your child the words penis and vagina? How about vulva? Like, it's weird they know vagina but don't know vulva, since vulva's the thing they're touching. I mean, so it's very strange. As a whole, typically, I mean, we're not saying there's no touching the vagina, obviously, but so what I say to parents is, do you teach them about their fingers, their elbows, their nose? Of course. Okay, do you call their penis and their vagina, vulva, those names? Well, no, we say their private area, this. All right, well, let's say that something, God forbid, ever happened. Somebody did something wrong to them. Obviously not their fault. The person who did it's wrong fault, it goes to court. And all they can keep saying is my private parts. They cannot identify. You've actually made it more difficult for your child to be protected. Teach them the language of the words, and then say that in life there are certain places where conversations are appropriate and not appropriate. So if I go to work, there are conversations I am not supposed to be having at work, but I could have outside of work. So if I go to school and I'm in class, there might be conversations that are appropriate at home that are not appropriate in that room. So we need to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I hate that our time is over.
Well, thanks for having me on. This has been a blast.
So I so much appreciate it, and for the extra time too.
Oh, my pleasure.